no secret. G.
The chimes of time ring out the news. Another day is through. Someone slipped and fell. Was that someone you? You may have longed for added strength,
Your courage to renew. Do not be disheartened, for I bring hope to you. It is no secret what God can do, what He's done for others, He'll do for you. With arms wide open, He'll pardon you. It is no secret what God can do.
There is no night, for in His light you'll never walk alone. You'll always feel at home wherever you may roam.
There is no power can conquer you.
When God is on His side,
Just take Him at His promise. Don't run away and hide. It is no secret what God can do, what He's done for others, He'll do for you. With arms wide open, He'll pardon you. It is no secret what God can do.
it is no secret.
It is no secret what God can do, what He's done for others, He'll do for you. With arms wide open, He'll pardon you. It is no secret what God can do. It is no secret what God can do.
Okay, come to me. Everybody can be seated now. I want to say greetings to everybody that's in here and everybody that's out there. This is the Children of the Free Church Ministry. And my name is Charles Garcia, otherwise known as Buddy Garcia. We gather here every Sunday evening live at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Archives are available on the site childrenofthefree.com and Facebook and YouTube and Pinterest, and maybe down the line here some old archives from Ustream as well. Now, I want you to watch now and to get your messages into me after the teaching so I can know how it's being received. I do want to say, and I emphasize this, as an American family holiday, Happy Easter. Now, as to Christ's resurrection, He was crucified Wednesday, 6 p.m., and He rose Saturday evening, 6 p.m., the beginning of Sabbath, 3 days, 72 hours later, like he said. Now, 2 weeks ago, we taught on the errors of Easter tradition. And we were taught that, as Christ said it, we make the Word of God void by our traditions. Indeed, mostly that is done on the traditions that we celebrate here. And that was Satan's intention. That was his intent. Not as he would have you believe and the world would have you believe, 1.5 days between Good Friday to sunrise Sunday morning. I really don't know what's wrong with the world that they don't have a big question mark over their head. That's only 1.5 days. But 3 days, just as he said. A week ago, we taught how unlike all the other founders of religion, Christ was not just another good and wise teacher, right? I mean, with what he said of himself, either he was a nut or a fake, or he really is who and what he said. And it's all true. Now, it all stems from and stands on the resurrection. Did he come out of that tomb? He told us, Christ did, that the only sign that we were going to get was the sign of Jonah, which translates to 3 days. That's why it's so important to teach the errors of Easter tradition and point it out beyond a doubt that exactly what he said happened. He was in the heart of the earth 3 days and 3 nights. That's the only sign that we were going to get that he is who he is. So obviously, we proved that is true when he came out. Tonight we're going to prove that he did actually come out, because that's what it all stems on. Just that one sign to start off. And also the Apostle Paul, sent one by God that wrote 2/3 of the New Testament. He said that if Christ be not risen, our faith is vain. And we are false witnesses. So before we start tonight's teaching, we need to agree on 8 facts of history in order to present our case. That's the way I'll say it. These 8 facts, historical facts, are easier to prove historically than the resurrection. So we have to establish that first and agree on it. Number 1, Jesus lived. Like I said last week as the introduction, I said, if you don't believe that he lived, there's no reason to be having this discussion or this discourse or this lesson that we're going to teach tonight. So you have to first of all accept that Jesus lived. That's much easier to prove historically than the resurrection. So do we agree on that?
Yes, sir.
That's number 1. Number 2, that he was crucified at the instigation of certain Jewish religious leaders, and that the Roman authorities ordered it and carried it out. The reason this fact is drawn out and long, like I just told you, is because there are people in the world, used to be more, but there are people in the world who called Jews Christ killers. Well, Christ was a Jew. All his disciples were Jews. No, it's the Romans that ordered it and carried it out, instigated by certain Jewish religious leaders. So we accept that, right? Number 3, that he was, and I'm going to emphasize the word, considered dead. He was crucified pretty definite death the way it's actually designed to do. He was crucified. He was stabbed in the side by a spear. He was taken down off the cross and buried. He was considered dead. And the reason I'm emphasizing that is because that's true. That's an acceptable fact. He was considered dead. Because there are some theories and explanations that question whether or not he was dead. Okay? We're still following each other, right? Number 4. These are of the 8 facts, historical facts. Number 4, that he, Christ, was buried in a known, accessible tomb. Now, if you know anything about the history and about Scripture and about what truly happened, the Jewish leaders and the Roman authorities set this up. They prepared it. They prepared a tomb. They got a giant rock to put in front of it. They got guards to guard it. Why? Because Christ said he was going to come out, right? So it seems obvious that the Jewish leaders and the Roman authorities would make sure that didn't happen. So it would have to be in a known, accessible tomb, not just some arbitrary tomb. Number 5, he was preached, raised. Emphasizing the word preached. We're not saying here that he was raised, although that's going to be the sum of our proof here. We're saying that he was preached, raised, historically. He was preached, not only raised, but a living, vital, eating. Does anybody remember? Have you got any meat when he comes out? Eating, vital, and ascended into the heavens. Number 6, we need to agree that the Jewish leaders who we've been talking about here would be more interested in disproving the resurrection than anybody else. They hated him. They did not believe in what he said. They called him a blasphemer. So we agree they'd be most interested, right? Number 7, the disciples were persecuted. And they were persecuted horribly because of preaching and claiming the resurrection. That's not to be confused with the later Christian martyrs in Rome, in the Colosseum, that were killed. They were killed just because they were Christians. These guys were killed because they preached the resurrection. And then the 8th fact we need to agree on is that the tomb was empty. Well, that one should be obvious because I just told you is a known, accessible tomb. So the tomb was empty. Next, we're going to go into theories explaining the events around the resurrection. At first, I'm just going to go down the list and name them. And then we're going to go back over and say a little bit about each one. I'm going to pause on each one so you can start digesting things and figure it out. Or I should say digesting things. 1. Theory number 1. The disciples stole the body. Okay, remember he preached he was going to be in the grave 3 days and he was going to go out. So some people say, well, the disciples stole the body. 2. The Jewish leaders stole the body. Number 3. The Roman leaders stole the body. So far, everybody's stealing the body. Number 4. The women went to the wrong tomb. Tears in their eyes, weeping. They went to the wrong tomb. Number 5, it was all hallucinations. People wanted to believe it so badly that they made it up in their minds. Hallucinations. Number 6, resuscitation. In the coolness of the tomb, Jesus resuscitated and woke up and came out. We're coming back to it. Number 7, the disciples lied. They're lying. Okay. And then number 8, it's all true. So let's go back to number 1. I want to say something about each one of these. Number 1, theory explaining the events around the resurrection. The disciples stole the body. Well, then that's theory number 7. They're lying. Right? Number 2, theory number 2, the Jewish leaders stole the body. Why they would do that, I don't know. That's not been expounded, but I would say this. If that's true, if the Jewish leaders stole the body, then all they had to say is, we stole the body. But that would only explain an empty tomb, not a risen, vital, and ascended Christ. Number 3, same thing. Roman leaders stole the body. It's the same. The body's gone, and they took it. All they had to say is, hey, we took it. And again, that only explains the empty tomb, not the living, vital, eating, ascended Christ. And both of those fall under the category of lying, the Jewish and the Roman leaders. Number 4, the women went to the wrong tomb. Well, it's obvious. Take them to the right tomb, right? That still falls into the category of lying. It's unintentional, but that wasn't true. Number 5, it's all hallucinations, glorified daydreams. They wanted it to be true so badly that they made all this up in their minds. If that was true, then the tomb would not be empty. There would be a body there. And since that's not true, again, they're lying. Which brings us to theory number 6, explaining the events around the resurrection. And number 6 is the theory of resuscitation. Some people say that Jesus practiced how to act like he was dead. So after in the coolness of the tomb, he could wake up and come out. That doesn't explain how he moved that giant rock or how he got past the guards that were there. For one thing, it's still a lie, and people don't resuscitate from a Roman crucifixion. Crucified, stabbed in the side, and we already had said that he was considered dead when they took him down. Theory number 7, explaining the events around the resurrection, is the disciples lied. And that is one of the theories, but it still just says they're lying, which includes theories 1 through 6, and you can lump them all in there. They're lying. That leaves only 2 tenable theories. 7, they're lying. It's all lies. Or number 8, it's all true. It's truthful reporting by honest men. If you didn't already do it on your own, make sure you get your tablets out, because I should have told you there's a lot of information here you may want to jot down and ponder over or look up or research out. There are 4 reasons that I will call proofs that it's true, that the resurrection is true. And we're going to go over them now. Reason or proof number 1 is that there was demonstrable cataclysmic change for the better in all the witnesses, each and every one. Examples. 1. Peter, the Apostle Peter, unstable. He fled when the soldiers came to get Jesus. He denied Christ as Christ said he would do it. He was always in trouble, unstable, tried to walk on the water, started thinking about it, and started to sink. At one point in Scripture, Jesus even turns around to Peter, and he says, "Get thee behind me, Satan." He was always in trouble, always unstable. That's pre-resurrection, okay? Should have pointed that out. Post-resurrection. Stability. Courage. He becomes very courageous enough to preach Christ to a mocking mob in the streets. He became the rock on which the church was built. He was stable and courageous enough that he said he wasn't worthy to die in the manner of his Lord, so he had them crucify him upside down. And he died that way, martyr's death. Unstable to the rock. That's cataclysmic change for the better. Number 2, the Apostle John. John and his brother were the most self-centered, selfish. They used to call them, their nickname was the Sons of Thunder, because anytime anybody disagreed with them or said anything against them or against Christ, they would try and call down thunder and fire from heaven on those people. They asked, and as a matter of fact, they had their mother ask for the best seats in heaven when they get there. Completely selfish, self-centered. Pre-resurrection. Post-resurrection. And these examples, by the way, I'm telling you, it's like a guillotine dropping. Complete change, pre-resurrection, post-resurrection. After the resurrection, John, and almost all scholars that I know of will agree, comes to be known as the Apostle of Love. So from self-centered selfishness to love, cataclysmic change for the better. Number 3, Thomas, the Apostle Thomas. Pre-resurrection, always doubting. That's where the phrase doubting Thomas comes from. He was always doubting. Jesus once said to his disciples that were gathered around him that he was going to go and he was going to prepare mansions for them, and that he was going to come back. And he told them, where I go you know, and the way you know. Where you can picture all the apostles, like most Hoopy Bird Christians this day, be going, yay, mansions, yay, castles. But not Thomas. Thomas is going, we don't know where you're going. How can we know the way? That's exactly. Said that to Jesus. Post-resurrection. Briefly, very briefly, he's still the same. He's saying, I won't believe he's dead till I see the marks and put my hands in the marks of his death. And Jesus appeared to him and offered him. He said, behold my hands, behold my side. Thomas put his hands in them. And he said, my Lord and my God. Post-resurrection. He never doubted again, never wavered again. He took the gospel to the Himalayas. At that time was the most philosophically difficult place to go and preached Christ. Until he was killed by a Brahmin sword in India. Again, doubt, never wavering, from pre-resurrection to post-resurrection, cataclysm or cataclysmic change for the better. Now, I believe that a crisis can change a man, but a lie seldom for the better. I think we agree on that, right? Reason number 2. Proof number 2. Well, this one's fascinating. It's interesting. Take a drink of water here. Number 2 proof is indirect evidences and consistencies. There's something when you gain and look at the whole picture and gain the evidence, it strikes you, this is true. Indirect evidences and consistencies. It's interesting. Like I said, it's not direct, it's indirect. These are internal signs of truth and honesty. Mark wrote his gospel to the Gentiles, I should say, non-Jews. It's the shortest gospel, and yet he has, let's remind you here, they either lied or they're telling the truth, okay? So think of them first of all as being liars, okay? His is the shortest gospel. He wrote it to Gentiles, and yet he has written Christ referring to himself as the Son of Man more than any other gospel or any other gospel writer. To Gentiles, the Son of Man means just that, Son of Man. But to Jews, the Son of Man is a phrase that means the Messiah. Now, if they were lying, why wouldn't Mark have Christ referring to himself as the Son of God? This is an internal or indirect evidence and consistency that the man's telling the truth, because he's writing down what Christ said, not what he thinks you ought to hear. Another indirect evidence. In the New Testament world, and you ladies can thank God it's not like that anymore. In the New Testament world, women were not thought capable of being credible witnesses. Yet the first reporters and witnesses that came out of that tomb was from women. Again, an internal evidence, a sign of or signal of truth and honesty. If they're going to lie, why would they have, under those circumstances, have women be their first reporters and telling the story that he came out of that tomb? Third example of indirect evidence is the length of time. If they waited 7 weeks, it's almost 2 months, to tell the story fully of what happened. If this was a lie, why did it take them so long to make up a lie? You'd think they'd want to do it right away if they're lying, but not take so long. It's suspicious. It makes it suspicious it would take them long to come up with a story, that long to come up with a story that supposedly is true. Well, guess what? Christ told them to wait until then. These are the actions of honest men, to wait 7 weeks, even though it could hurt their story. Those are indirect evidences, consistencies. Number 3, proof of the veracity of the resurrection is the price paid by all of them for a lie. They all died martyrs' deaths, with the exception of the Apostle John. And if you've been listening to the teaching, you'll find out that there is sound history to suggest that even the Apostle John, they tried to martyr him. They tried to throw him into a vat of boiling oil, and he came out unscathed. God had something else in mind for him. But in the purpose of this story right now, all of them died martyrs' deaths except John. Bartholomew, he was flayed to death. That means he was whipped till his skin came off of him, until he died in Armenia. Thomas, we just talked about, he was pierced with a Brahmin sword in India by idolatrous priests. Peter, we talked about too, crucified upside down. St. Andrew, which we didn't talk about, he was crucified on an X-shaped cross which bears his name, St. Andrew's Cross. Mark, we just talked about him tonight. Mark was dragged to death in the streets of Alexandria, Egypt. Now, I've mentioned this before. That sounds pretty bad, but that being flayed and whipped till your skin comes off, how about being dragged to death? That would take an awful lot of dragging for a long time. Dragged to death in the streets of Alexandria. Why? Because they wouldn't stop preaching the story of the resurrection. And then we come to reason number 4. And this is the greatest convincing truth, what I would call the crux. And oddly enough, I think if you look it up, crux, C-R-U-X, means cross. The greatest convincing truth and the crux of the truth here. The price they paid, I just said, and number 4, that they died alone. All of these witnesses. Far-flung places from each other, alone. 2,000 years ago, there's no modern communication. No way anyone can know what another said or did. And it's inconceivable, the authority and scholars said, that under those conditions and circumstances, that not one of them, or all, would break and confess the lie, if it was a lie. But you search anywhere, any source, anywhere in history, in 2,000 years, and you won't find one. Not a single one that did. They all died horrible deaths alone. Now I'm going to change here for a second. I'm going to read a transcript of Dr. Scott's teaching. I'm going to do this just briefly to show you him illustrating the point, and you'll get a kick out of it because I was one of the congregants that was singled out by Doc to illustrate this message. He says, St. Thomas Aquinas, his great proof, and Dr. Scott saying the greatest, I think, proof of the veracity of the disciples and the resurrection is that they died alone. Now, I do every year when I finish this message, I can, or as I do, conceive of a group of men trying to save face, telling a story, having bet on the wrong man, crushed by his failure, as they would view it, trying to resurrect him with a lie. I can conceive of them staying together and group pressure holding together the consistencies of their lie, because they don't want to be the first one to break faith and rat on the others and collapse the whole thing. Let's assume that Buddy Garcia and Ed Masry, the famous attorney of Aaron Brockovich fame, and Dr. Craig Lamp, present here, concocted this story. You don't have television, you don't have satellite, you don't have fax, you don't have telephone, and as long as you stay together under great pressure, you don't want to be the one, Ed, to let Craig and Buddy down. But now separate you. You, Ed, you be Bartholomew in Armenia. I just told you what happened to him. And you, Buddy, be Thomas over in India. And Craig, you be Peter in Rome. You've lost contact with each other, and this is me talking, not Dr. Scott, but in those days, most often when you parted from somebody in those days and you went that far away from each other, you weren't going to see them again. That was just it. Lost contact with each other. You can't pick up a phone, you can't call anybody, nobody knows where you are. And since you know you're telling a lie and you know you don't really expect the generations forever to believe it, and you, Ed and Armenia, are being flayed to death. Literally, that is, skinned with a whip. Your skin peeled off of you. All you got to do to get out is say it's a lie. Buddy wouldn't know it. Craig wouldn't know it. You could see them next time exchanging stories together, saying, boy, I really told them in Armenia, I told the story and nobody could forget it the way I told it. Says Buddy and Craig wouldn't know you lied. You, Buddy, you're going to be pierced with a sword in India. You're never going to see Ed or Craig again. All you have to do, get out of the pressure, is say, it's a lie. You, Craig, you're off in Rome. You're a little more exposed. He's in a big city. But with your life at stake, all you have to say is, sorry, maybe I dreamed it, and wiggle out. As Thomas Aquinas said, it's psychologically inconceivable that these men separated, each one paying the supreme price for their story and each one dying alone, that some one of the group wouldn't break away from his fellows and say, hey, it wasn't true. Not one shred of evidence surviving 2,000 years of hard-looking critics, people wanting to disprove the resurrection. You'll never find one record anywhere on the face of this earth where any one of these men ever wavered unto their terrible death in telling the story. Folks, they were telling the truth. He did come out of that tomb. Then it's true when he said, I am the way, I am the light, I am the life, I am the door. By me, if any man enter. And then the rest is true. He said, I will never leave you or forsake you. He said, he that cometh unto me, I will in no wise cast out. He said, I am the Lord that healeth thee. He said, I am the Lord that provideth. And amongst everything else, he said he's coming back to get his faithing, trusting ones. You can count on that. It's all true, and that's my message. And it's offering time. For the offertory we have uncloudy day. Amen to that. So listen to the words and enjoy. Get your offerings done. Your tithing in. Don't give unless you've been taught. I dare say you have been. So do the right thing.
Oh, they tell me of a home far beyond the skies. Oh, they tell me of a home far away. Oh, they tell me of a place where no storm clouds rise. Oh, they tell me of an
Okay, keep your seats. I just want to say in closing, I don't have anything else to add to that message. I hope I convinced you. I do want to say to you out there, and you know who I'm talking to and about, I get your prayer requests, and they're being prayed on. You just remain in faith, and God will see you like the lesson I taught, show me the faith, show him the faith, and give him the opportunity to enter in to work his good to them who are the called according to his purposes. That's the true translation of that phrase from Romans. So everybody hang in there. Tune in next week for more teaching. Get your messages into me. Get your giving in to support, and fix bayonets.
Well, I searched and I searched for a road that led to glory. I wondered if I'd ever find my way. I was so dismayed, for the road it seemed so lonely. But then I heard a voice within me say, you've got to keep on walking, keep right on walking, walking in the light of the Lord. You'll get to heaven someday, and only get in the faith way, walking in the light of the Lord. Well, I faced and I faced, and the Lord, he gave me mercy. I faced and he brightened up my way. I sat down to rest, for my feet had grown so weary. But then I heard a voice within me say, you've got to keep on walking, keep right on walking, walking in the light of the Lord. You'll get to heaven someday, can only get in the faith way, walking in the light of the Lord. You've got to keep on walking, keep right on walking, walking in the light of the Lord. You'll get to heaven someday, can only get in the faith way, walking